Good evening. My name is Jim Belanca. I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of the Voice of the Village, which organized this event. The Voice of the Village is a group of property owners and property managers who wish to open up lines of communication with not only the citizens of Grosse Pointe, but with all the Grosse Pointe communities. The members of the Voice of the Village either own or manage approximately 80% of the commercial district known as the Village. The members are Georgia Valenti, Ed Russell, Bob Svire, Chris Blake and John Donnelly, Randy Sinaki and Frank Torrey, Pat O'Brien and myself on behalf of the Edward Froelich family. Our Facebook page is meant to be a community sounding board and a resource for news, event information, and the development practices taking place in the village and in the greater Grosse Pointe communities. We are about communicating and sharing ideas. We are not a political organization. We will not and do not endorse any candidate for public office. Our purpose is solely and only to represent the community, a community in which we all live, our businesses, and working together towards changes. Are you having fun? Keep going. Towards changes for the better. Ever seen the show Wicked Tuna? That's what I kind of getting set up to be harpooned here.
That's a little bit.
Okay, good. I'm not that short. We are of course dedicated to the village of Grosse Pointe and the commercial districts in the village. But we recognize that the city of Grosse Pointe is tied to the hip with its adjoining communities. What goes on in the park and the positive things that go on in the farms clearly have an impact on what we do in the village. We like to think that what we do in the village has a positive impact on the park and on the hill, and frankly, all of the businesses on Mack Avenue throughout the points. A strong commercial base is part of the quality of life that we all enjoy in the Grosse Pointes. It's hard to imagine Grosse Pointe without its parks, without its schools, without its libraries, and for us, without its commercial districts. Those of you who were with us at the city kitchen meeting in February learned that I'm very passionate about this topic. I promised to keep my remarks under 15 minutes, and that's why I wrote them down, because I talked nonstop for an hour in February. The meeting in February was attended by about 100 people, all organized by 6 ladies who took time out of their busy days to work toward improving and maintaining the standard of life that they enjoy in Grosse Pointe. We know that the most pressing question all of you have right now is relative to the entire block that was formerly occupied by Ace and Borders. We announced on February the 7th that Kirchhoff Company had entered into and reached a tentative agreement with the Derone hardware family, and the Derones are here, to occupy the 18,000 square feet on the corner of Kirchhoff and St. Clair. We were also in negotiations at that time with another large user for the center building, which comprises approximately 11,000 square feet. We also announced that St. John's had purchased or taken an option to purchase the Borders building with the intent of developing it for offices and other commercial uses. Well, we are about communication. And like it or not, communication means talking about positive things and negative things. So I have some good news, and I have some bad news. So let's start with the bad news. In spite of our efforts, we have not yet reached an agreement with the Deroni family, an agreement that would span the next 20 years. We are very disappointed that at this point we haven't reached that agreement, and I know they are too. Where it goes from here is anybody's guess, but I was told just minutes before I took this podium by their representative, Jim Bierry, that they need a couple more weeks just to make sure that all the T's are dotted, or T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. Same goes with the 11,000 square feet. The folks behind that need until June to make up their mind. Please believe me that nobody is more interested in finding suitable tenants for the 30,000 square feet than Kercheval Company and myself. It represents 35% of our holdings in the village. We hold about 82,000 square feet of property on Kercheval. We all anxiously await the plans for St. John's. The early development of that block is very important to the entire village. Nobody knows that more than the voice of the village. I think it's important, however, to explain the delay and the level of our disappointment, all of ours. I think it's important for the community to understand what it takes to put a deal like this together. We began marketing that property more than a year ago. We knew that ACE was not going to renew in March of last year. The ACE building the ACE property consists of two buildings which were unified into one building. We knew that it would be an uphill battle to find tenants because right across the street, we owned and operated and tried to lease the old Hickey's property for more than 5 years. There was one hard retailer who was interested in that property in 5 years, and that was a mattress store. Okay? So we concentrated our efforts on the ACE property for users such as a hardware store, a health food store, and perhaps a bookstore. We explored every option presented to us. Our negotiations with the Deroni family began in December. We reached a tentative agreement in early February. So let's talk about why it's so hard, having reached a tentative agreement, to close the deal. And I think it's important for you to understand this because there's a lot of rumors going around about rents and costs and things like that, which we'd like to dispel if we could. Simply returning that 30,000 square foot building into the original two buildings that existed there has a price tag to it. Just to install a separate electrical service and to put the walls, the demising walls back up that were taken down when Damon's took over that center section, has cost us approximately $100,000. Since the HVAC system is old, the HVAC is the furnaces and the air conditioning, that's going to have to be replaced. And when you replace that, you have to replace the roof, and the roof is old. So the roof is $150,000. Now, when you separated the 11,000 square foot building from the 18,000 square foot building, there are certain requirements to make the building safe. Fire codes have changed. Just to bring that building up to snuff, about another $100,000. So at this point, before we even put a pen to paper with the Deroni family, we're into this property for about $350,000. So what's left to do? Well, the interior of both buildings has to be completely gutted, redone. The doors, the floors, the ceilings, the lighting system is no longer compatible. As I said, the heating and cooling system no longer functions because it's 2 buildings instead of 1. There's 8 to 10 furnaces that will be installed to provide heating and air conditioning in those 2 buildings. The landlord will pay some of it, and the tenant will pay some of it. Plus, the tenant is required to lay out the building according to their specifications, to put fixtures in, to buy inventory, to buy equipment, and to hire a staff. And we still haven't even talked about doing anything on the outside of the building. It's not an easy task. It takes time. People need to be prudent. We understand that. The Deronis understand that. At the end, we believe that our vision for that corner will be realized, just not quite as fast as we had hoped. And our task is no different than Frank Torrey's task as he tries to finish renting out Kercheval Place, or Bob's Fire's task and as he tries to fill the empty Gap building, or Georgia Valenti's task across the street. If anybody thinks the rents are high, I can assure you they are not. There are fixed costs that we have to deal with, that we have no control over. Taxes is one. The properties that we manage for in the village, the average tax rate is approximately $3.50 per square foot. So whatever we charge per square foot, somebody's got to add that $3.50 because those taxes have to be paid. Just as somehow, some way, all of these upfront costs, whether they're provided by us or the Deroni family or any other tenant, have to be repaid before anybody realizes a profit on that investment. So welcome to our world. Please be patient. Please give us an opportunity to do what we think we need to do to install and have in place outstanding tenants for decades to come. But let's talk about some good news. So, we announced in February that David Gilbert would be opening up a restaurant on the corner of St. Clair and Kercheval in the space then occupied by the Arts Center. We were able to reach an agreement with David, who's here tonight with his wife Monica. Raise your hand, or there they are in the corner over there. On Monday, the city of Grosse Pointe approved the transfer. On Monday, the city of Grosse Pointe approved the transfer of their liquor license as well as their site plan. You saw the pictures in the back. We are very, very happy and very excited about the prospect of the opening of Marais as a cornerstone in the village. So thank you, David and Monica. We are pleased that the Arts Center now has a permanent home in the village. Their first exhibition is this weekend. Please take time to visit the Arts Center at their new location and visit that exposition. Become a frequent visitor, not only of them, but of all the stores, and that's where you folks come in. No matter what we do, no matter how hard we work to have a diversified community, it has to be patronized by you. And you have to be willing to pay an extra 50 cents to park instead of driving somewhere else where parking may be free. You have to think of Grosse Pointe first. The first stop for your shopping, the first stop for your entertaining. And if you do that, you will make our job easier, and we will preserve the jewel that is the Grosse Pointe commercial districts. By the way, Amy DeBrunner is here. Amy, go visit her this weekend at the new Arts Center. We've all heard the news of She. She is an exclusive ladies' boutique. Howard and Sharon Eisenstadt are the proprietors. Did I see Howard here? Is Howard here? I don't know. I can't see with the Klieg light. There he is, Howard. It will be located between the rear entrances of City Kitchen and the fabulous Chez Lulu, our new hair salon in the village. We look forward to their opening, hopefully in the first week of May. Sharon's Bloomfield Hills location has drawn visitors from all over the greater metropolitan area of Detroit. We're very excited that people in Grosse Pointe will now be seeking her styling advice. And we're also very happy that Bloomfield Hills has come to Detroit and that has come to Grosse Pointe, and that Grosse Pointe isn't necessarily doing the other way around. Some more good news. The city of Grosse Pointe recently announced that it would repave Lot 2, which is the lot immediately behind Murray on one corner and Starbucks on the other. I think it's the largest lot in the city, or the second largest. The city is expending in excess of $1 million to do that from the parking fund. The new parking lot will hopefully begin the cleanup of the alley by removing the refuse from the alley and putting it into the parking lot and enclosures. It will also be gated, so we won't be tied to putting money in meters anymore. Thank you, City of Grosse Pointe. And I know the mayor's here and several council people are here, so thank you. We are also happy to announce that the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, has accepted the task of taking over the special events formerly managed by the Village Association, so critical to the merchants and to the community. They are, of course, to paint the windows, which I think is next month in early May, music on the plaza, which will start every Thursday in June, the sidewalk sale in July, the Village Fest in, I think, September, the Halloween festivities on Halloween, and of course the tree lighting ceremony at Christmas time. In order to build upon the fine work that the Village Association has done for literally decades, and thank you, Mike Kramer, I know you've been involved in that for 30 years. The DDA has hired Melissa Megden Bunker, a Grosse Pointe resident, who has over 20 years of experience in promoting events such as this. We should be very excited about her involvement in these projects and the DDA's commitment to promoting and expanding these events. I don't know if Melissa's here or not. If you are, there she is. She's in the back. Thank you, Melissa. In addition, the DDA is in the process of negotiating a contract with a public relations firm in order to rebrand the village and or create more public awareness, not only in the Grosse Pointes, but outside of Grosse Pointe, of what we have here. The DDA expects to sign a contract with Edward Nakfour next month. Edward has worked for the Somerset Collection and currently does similar work for the city of Birmingham. Edward, you're here. Where are you? There he is. Welcome, Edward. So to the DDA, thank you for Melissa, thank you for Edward, and thank you for helping us all create more awareness of the village. The Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce is actively working with all of the communities to promote business opportunities and to otherwise coordinate the efforts of organizations such as ours and a myriad of other businesses and organizations who look to the Grosse Pointe Chamber for leadership. Thank you, Jenny Betcher, for all that you do. Jenny's here. There's very much more on the horizon. I'm getting close. The merchants of the village, as well as the property owners, have long sought the city's involvement in changing the method by which we charge for parking and the hours of parking. Our wish list includes free parking after 6 o'clock to encourage people to continue to shop and dine after 6 without the need to feed the meters or the gated parking. We are pleased that the City of Grosse Pointe has commissioned or will be commissioning a study to determine the cost-effective free parking after 6 o'clock, as well as some element of free parking, a free hour or a free two hours like they have in Birmingham. The Voice of the Village and the merchants, however, have been pushing hard for this, but we all must recognize that there's a cost to free parking. It's difficult to determine the revenue lost versus the increased traffic and the revenue increase associated with more traffic. We look forward to the report of Carl Walker, the parking authority who's been working with the city for decades, who's been hired as a consultant. We expect that his report will be done by the end of this year. Finally, we have pushed for expanding the very restrictive ordinances that are in place in the village which limit commercial uses on Kercheval. We also hope that we can all gain some insight from Mr. Gibbs as he makes his presentation. And I don't have a clue of what he's going to say. So there's the introduction. On behalf of the Voice of the Village, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Robert Gibbs, who is considered a leading retail planning consultant. He's worked all over the country and all over the world with mayors, architects, and developers. Just last year, Mr. Gibbs was honored by the Clinton Presidential Library for his life contribution in urban planning and development. He has consulted with the cities of Alexandria, Virginia, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Charleston, South Carolina, Chicago, Denver, Houston, Portland, Seattle, and yes, even Grosse Pointe Farms in Birmingham. He has helped develop master plans for the city of Naples, Florida, the city of Houston, even Auckland, New Zealand, which I have no idea where that is. He has worked with over 500 public and private consulting projects across the United States, the Pacific Rim, and Europe. A plug for your book. In 2012, he published Principles of Urban Retail Planning and Development. It is his most recent of 5 publications. He lectures at Harvard University and is affiliated with the American Society of Landscape Architects, the Michigan ASLA Executive Board, the Congress for New Urbanism, the MICNU Michigan, to which he is a board member, the International Council of Shopping Centers, and the Urban Land Institute. When he's done with his lecture, he will be happy to answer questions, as will I. Please welcome, on behalf of the Voice of the Village, Robert Gibbs. Thank you, Robert. I'm going to do what he did to you, Robert.
There you go.
You want that up?
Okay, I'd rather get my slides up. I heard you. I'd rather make sure my slides are up first. My slides don't come up, we won't need the microphone.
Ready for me to move it?
All set, thank you.
Straight up. There you go.
Thank you for coming out on this stormy night, and I'm delighted to be back in Grosse Pointe. I'm not a frequent visitor here, not as much as I should be, and I was telling Jim that I hadn't even, I grew up in Birmingham, and I hadn't even been here until I was 40 years old when I got hired by the farms to work on the Hill District, I'm embarrassed to say, and once I came here, I immediately called my wife and said we should have raised our family here. It's really a beautiful community that has all of the attributes I think one could ask for. with the waterfront and your parks and your downtown area and the really fine neighborhoods. And I do think your housing stock is about much higher quality than we have in Birmingham. I also have been consulting with the Rock Financial Dan Gilbert team for quite a while on Woodward, and we brought in a large number of experts from around the country, and I gave them the tour, and this was by and large their favorite place that we visited, and they all took extensive photographs of how beautiful you are. That being said, I'm not an expert on Grosse Pointe, and I'm not going to make any recommendations for you. We did do a study a few years ago for the farms in the Hill area, which I think for the most part has been implemented. Instead, I'm going to focus tonight on general trends and lessons that I have learned for you to try to get a better understanding for you to make policy decisions about your own community. And I will warn you that given this lecture, some of you will interpret it one way and say Gibbs said this. Others of you will interpret it another way and say, well, no, Gibbs said that. And you'll each take out of it a different point of view. But like Jim alluded, and thank you for the Village, the Voice of the Village, for bringing me here. This industry, the shopping center and retail industry, is highly risky. Retailers have to buy merchandise a year in advance, and they have to anticipate a year ahead what you're going to like, what colors, what styles, what designers, what's going to be in, what's going to be out, and you're very fickle. You constantly change your mind, and if they're wrong, they can be put out of business. It's a very tough business. And in terms of the real estate class, for the developers that have these as tenants, it's the most risky business class. It's much more risky than office. It's much more risky than residential, and much more risky than apartments and industrial, because the tenants are constantly turning over, they're constantly going out of business, and the shoppers are totally dependent on weather, the economy, what's hot, what's not, what do they have to do, and they don't have to shop. This is where my wife and I get to live about half the year up in Harbor Springs, Michigan. And I put this in because it sort of illustrates the basic principle that I want you to take home with you tonight. And that's that people do not have to shop, and the small retailers that we like have to be located where the people are. And Harbor Springs works because, for a number of reasons, but it's on a state highway. This is State Highway 119. This is the deepest port on Lake Michigan. This is where cruise liners used to come. And the businesses do well there because people drive by their front door. It's easy to park and go into the shop, and it's convenient. If they were to reroute the highway, which they're planning to do, when they reroute the highway outside of the downtown, then the retail commerce will be cut in half. And a lot of cities went through that experiment in the 1950s and 60s and crashed almost immediately. The place-making of making a wonderful place to live like you have depends on four primary land uses: residential, civic, employment, and retail. Each of these four uses reinforce themselves. If you have strong neighborhoods, you can have strong retail. If you have strong employment, if you have a lot of workers, they support the restaurants, which support the neighborhoods and support the retail. A strong community supports civic places. Good schools, like you have, supports the residential values. The risky part, though, is the retail. If the retail goes out of business or becomes pawn shops or tattoo parlors or whatever, or becomes closed up, underperforming stores, it can immediately have a negative impact on the other land uses. People like living close to good retail. I saw a study recently that said people will pay 15 to 20% more for their homes if they can walk to a Whole Foods. That's a stronger amenity than a clubhouse or even a golf course, nationally. We know how to do village-type residential. The New Urbanism Group, which I'm one of the original founders, has figured out how to do walkable communities with very interesting compact housing that appeals to the empty nester, the first-time home buyer, the single parent, or whomever. These we can do with great densities. This one, for example, in Charlotte, has a density of about 35 homes per acre. This one in Florida has a density of about 40 homes per acre. And statistically, that scares a lot of people, but when I show them these places, this is Alexandria, they say, well, I love that place, but just cut it down from 20 homes per acre to 6 homes or 5 homes per acre and make it look the same. I work, about half of my clients are cities and villages and public sector, half of my clients are developers. And I usually get called in too late, and I have to do what's known as workouts. This is a project that I was called into in the West, where a very large company built an entire commercial main street about the size of the village, about the same amount of square footage. They speculated on it, and they haven't been able to lease 1 square foot because the architect convinced them that the grocery store should only be 15,000 square feet because he said nobody should shop in a grocery store larger than 15,000 square feet because all of the things I like can fit in a 15,000 square foot store. Well, in reality, competitive grocery stores need to be about 45 to 60,000 square feet, and the market always wins. So this grocery store went across the street and built a strip center, and all of the retailers, the card shops, the hardware stores, the gift shops and such, the restaurants, have to be next to the anchor. Form follows anchor. So all of these tenants are across the street, and this center is underperforming because of that one flaw. They didn't listen to the anchor. They didn't listen to the market. They thought they knew better. And I could do, in fact, I'm writing a book right now called Failed Urbanism, where we just go through hundreds and hundreds of case studies. About 60% of all built town centers or shopping centers fail within 10 years. It's a highly risky way to make a living. Case in point, I used to work for the Taubman Company. I'm a landscape architect, practiced for a long time, worked in Ann Arbor, and went to work as an urban planner, and went to work for the Taubman Company, who taught me everything I know about retail. They were very generous. They put me through a 1-year program to unlearn everything I learned about urban planning because of its conflicts with good retail. This was the first mall I helped plan for them. We're trying to do urban malls. We're trying to bring urban regional shopping into cities. This is in Columbus, Ohio. And this was its closing day. And the mall lasted about 20 years because we built a beautiful mall with department stores, fine shops, very high quality, but we were not respectful of the street. We had very few windows. People would drive to the center, park in the garage, walk across the bridge, go shopping, and go home. And if you feed the city, it'll feed you. But if you don't, it will come back and hurt you. And there's always a struggle between what urban planners know is necessary for good urbanism and what developers know is essential for a sustainable return on their investment. And the two are always in conflict. The center also failed because of another center that I helped plan 20 years later. This is Easton Town Center in Columbus. And this center is thriving. And 20 years from now, this center will face challenges because we'll invent something new. We're always responding to your demands, to your lifestyle, inventing things new. The new trend is to build fake towns. It's to build streets, parks, squares, historic or new-looking buildings, but to accommodate the modern requirements. High ceilings, big footprints. This has some department stores that are 200,000 square feet in size. It is included in this town center is a Target and a Lowe's and a Sam's Club and a Costco and even a Walmart. They're all integrated together into a fairly walkable town center. And the main street even has parking meters. It has concrete sidewalks. When this center opened, its trade area was the entire state of Ohio. It's greatly outperformed market. And these can be very strong. We planned the village of Rochester in Michigan. That was, if you've ever been there, that was an enclosed mall that was torn down, and we tried to build one of these. I'm part of this movement, the Congress for New Urbanism. This is the very first famous project. This is our founder, Andreas Dewani. It's been widely embraced by Prince Charles, and a number of developers and countries have embraced these principles of trying to build new towns. These are new towns that look like the pre-war communities that really copy what you have here in Grosse Pointe. My job, and I plan the residential, but I'm known nationally for planning the commercial. My nickname is Big Box Bob. And, my job is to make their new town centers appealing to the best possible retailers and to make them outperform the suburban strip centers. Our goal is to make it more profitable for the developer to build urbanism without having overly restrictive codes. Instead of saying you have to build urbanism because it's a law, we want you to say we want to build urbanism because it's more profitable. And that's happened. The Urban Land Institute and all the other groups that used to dislike us now have embraced our principles. And we've actually, I think, won. Now that being said, there's still a lot of holdouts. This is one of the things we don't like. We don't like to see trees planted in front of storefronts. This hurts the commerce. This retailer is a small store, and he cannot advertise. He's not next to an anchor. He depends on people driving by his store, seeing what's available, making an impulse buy, and shopping. And so we're okay with trees, but we want you to use common sense. On the other hand, a lot of developers don't use common sense either. In order to have a sustainable store, this is a new town in the Carolinas, you need about 70% of clear glass. And by clear glass, I mean glass that's clear and that you can see through, so you can see things to buy. For some reason, the architects default on the specifications always to dark tinted glass, which hurts commerce. This store is vacant. All of these stores turn over. All of the retailers always go out of business because the architects specify dark, smoked glass, and there's only 30% of it. So code writers and city planners have to say things like, we insist on 70% clear glass. The developer will scream about it, but overall, it's better for the community to have these retailers be vibrant. There are dozens of retailing rules that I learned in the industry. My favorite is the 8-second rule. This is in Charleston. It takes 8 seconds to walk past most storefronts. You have 4 seconds before you reach the door. And you only have 1.5 seconds for the brain to see something to buy, because it takes about 3 seconds for the brain to tell the feet to slow down and turn right. It's called the 8-second rule. If you walk 1 step past the door, you will not likely turn around and go back. It just won't happen. And 3 times as many people will go into the store if the door is open. That's a pretty easy rule. The challenge, and it's very easy in shopping malls, because we don't have diesel trucks driving down the street. We don't have uneven pavers. We don't have teenagers hanging around and intimidating shoppers. And anything that distracts this eye for that 1 second, if a loud truck goes by, if a teenager, if you get bumped, But bicycles in the way, if you get distracted for that 1.5 seconds, you're likely to walk by. It's very challenging to do retail in cities. This is what we want. We want people to get engaged in the store window and then to buy something. Now, I consulted in Beverly Hills a while ago, and it's very interesting. I was in Winter Park, Florida last night. It's very interesting that the high rent districts just have concrete sidewalks. I think there's an inverse relationship between how much money you spend on the brick pavers and what the sales are. Now, that being said, this is Rodale Drive. They do power wash the sidewalks every day. They are extremely clean and well kept. They have on-street parking. They have all the basics. In urban planning, they teach us this. They say you need to have a park and a plaza. It should be very large, and it should be full of awnings, mimes, people selling hot dogs, carts and trees and bushes and whatever. And while that makes for a nice place and it makes it a place where somebody can sit and have their lunch, it kills these retailers. People don't like to go up steps. They won't even go up one step. Guys like him give shoppers the willies. They won't even go near him. They won't go around him, and you can't see the shops. Now, I get to work everywhere. I'm currently working in South Memphis, Tennessee. It is a very poor African-American community south of Memphis, an old neighborhood. It's where a king used to go there and have lunch when he would visit Memphis. And all of their retail is basically corner stores. It's technically a food desert. And our job is to help bring retail, because you have a lot of people, about 30,000 people, without cars, with very limited transportation, and we're trying to help the community to bring retail. Memphis itself has a very lively downtown. This is Beale Street. Maybe you've been there. It's full of bars, it's full of clubs, but it doesn't service the local population. People fly in from other cities to go there to pretend they live there. But the people that live there have to drive out to the malls. We're also working in Southampton, New York, in the Hamptons, on Long Island. And we were called in because they have 47 vacancies in Southampton. It's a very Tony area, very beautiful. The average houses are tens and tens of millions of dollars. And their challenge is they have a beautiful main street, 1,000 feet long. This was a library. And they have another secondary street here, Job, a large city parking lot. They had a grocery store here, a post office here, and just a little Cartier here. So it was a perfectly diagrammed shopping street. Anchor, 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 anchor shops. And people would go downtown on a regular basis. The families would go to the library, or the seniors would go to the library. They'd go to the post office. They would go to the grocery store. The downtown closed the post office, the library, and moved it outside of town because it had to be expanded. When that happened, and they also moved the post office outside of town, and they moved the grocery store outside of town because they wouldn't let the grocery store expand. The grocery store said, we're this big, we have to carry super giant paper towels or whatever, we have to be this big. If you don't let us expand, we're leaving. They said, good, goodbye. So by losing 3 anchors in a very short period of time, it's now a drugstore, they have 47 vacancies. You cannot support more than 30,000 square feet of retail without anchors. They do have one really nice old department store, the oldest department store in the country. Almost every city has that claim. And, it's a great place, but it's not sustainable even with the multi-millions of dollars because it doesn't have the anchors. This is one we're working on right now that I'm not allowed to show you. I just got a nasty letter from the attorney, even though it's a city. The basic premise of good retail consulting is that downtowns need to sell the goods and services that are needed and desired by the community. So if you're South Memphis and you need to shop at a dollar store or whatever, that's what your retail should provide. If you are a higher or middle level, you should provide whatever those goods and services are needed and desired. Birmingham at one time had a hardware, it had a grocery store. Ethan Allen used to be the Wilson Cadillac dealer. It provided the goods and needs that were desired and needed by the community, and I'm sure you did too. I know you had a Jacobson's. We had a Jacobson's, and I know you had that character. You have more of it than we do left. You need to understand the market. You have to have an independent market analysis to determine what is technically supportable in your downtown. And then you need to take these figures. This is one we did. I don't even know where this is. This is a market study we did where we found they could support 122,000 square feet of new retail. You need to find out what's supportable, what types of categories are supportable, what the sales will be. Rents are about 8% of sales. And then decide as a community which, if any of those, you want. We just did one of these for a small community in Maryland and said they could support a 22-screen cinema. They said, no thank you. They passed an ordinance at the next council meeting prohibiting any cinema larger than 2 screens, which is fine. That was their community value. You have to sell those goods and services needed and desired by your community. Currently, we know that a lot of you are leaving the village and the Hill and shopping elsewhere. A lot of your spending is leaving this community. We did a market study here years ago when we worked in the Hill. Nationally, Americans like to save money. We like to buy things at the lowest price possible, and we like to buy things in big boxes, and we like to save time. And these are the largest retailers in the world compared to Walmart. Walmart is the largest retailer in the world in every single category, from tires to diamonds. Most of Americans buy their diamonds in Walmart. You probably don't. The largest paint store, the largest shotgun store. They are the largest in every category. And half of the American families shop at Walmart every week. 80% of Americans shop at Walmart every quarter. Okay, I think I saw one survey where I think they verified that one person from Grosse Pointe went to Walmart last year, but we're skeptical about that figure. Actually, we know even some of you go to Walmart, but we know that you pull into your garage and shut the door and get to unload the car where nobody can see you. Actually, it's become fashionable to save money. Downtowns used to be where we did all of our shopping. And up until about 1960, downtowns had department stores. We all know downtown Woodward had Hudson's and Crawley's and Federal's. They had major department stores. And about 80% of the market share in any community was spent in the downtown. This is Bay City. This is Grand Rapids. What downtowns didn't have is they didn't have street trees, banners, food carts, or brick pavers. Those weren't invented until the downtowns were killed by urban planners, and then they repaired them with street trees. Okay, I'm being general, but that generally happened. This is what they look like. But they didn't have sign ordinances either. The bigger the better. They allowed grandiose department stores, 1 million square feet or so. But that's where you went to shop. And anything you needed to buy, groceries, cars, mattresses, anything, you would find in your downtown. And we all remember Detroit being that way, and of course the Village being that way. And I remember Birmingham being that way. This is the famous Wanamaker's department store in Philadelphia. It's 3 million square feet. That's the size of 12 super Walmarts, one per floor. Can you imagine if I went to Chicago or Detroit and said, I'm here to build 12 super Walmart stores in your downtown? They'd say, heck no. But a lot of people there shop there. And what we emphasize is it's okay to have large buildings, not this large, this would be inappropriate, of course, as long as you have good urbanism. These are the former department stores in Houston, where we've been doing a study. This is what they look like now. Their department stores are parking garages. I would say this would be great to make this a Target or a Kohl's or a Crate and Barrel. It'd be the best thing for the downtown. It would help the small retailers, and it would make it more sustainable. Wherever I go and do studies, we conduct focus groups, and we always ask people, what kinds of stores do you want downtown? And overwhelmingly, everyone says, I do not want any national chains in my downtown. They're adamant about it. They say, the only thing I like about national chains are their selection, style, merchandise, color, service, hours, fit, size, return policy, and quality. And I shop at national chains. But if you put a Banana Republic in my downtown, then it's going to ruin my life. And I don't want you to do it. Even if it's a complete historic building and you just have those two words, Banana Republic, they go mad. It's really funny. Now, there are exceptions. They do like Apple stores, Williams-Sonoma, Ann Taylor, H&M, and I can go on and on. It's okay to have national chains as long as it's ones that they personally like. And in fact, I was hired by Cambridge, Massachusetts to do a study where they actually wrote an ordinance saying no national chains on Central Square except those that the city council likes. That actually had a motion to pass, and then the attorney said that's unconstitutional. And so they're thinking about separating from the U.S. and being their own country. Most downtowns today just sell things we don't need, and you're an exception to that. You have some wonderful retailers here, lots of good stores. You know, you can buy the basics and you can buy things that you aspire to. It's very unusual. But most downtowns just sell scented candles and things like that. On average, downtowns today have about 2% of the market share. In the 1960s, they had 80%. This was the biggest collapse ever. And lifestyle centers have about 7%, but most of us do our shopping in malls or power centers. As an urbanist, I would like to see our downtowns get up to 25 to 30% of the market share. I think it's more sustainable if you can live and walk or ride your bike or just drive a mile or two and do your shopping rather than driving over to Somerset or wherever you go. Nothing against Somerset, but it's not that sustainable to have to go there all the time. Now, in New Zealand and in Australia, their downtowns are like we were in the 60s. They still have 75% of the market share. This is Auckland, and this is where you go when you want to buy anything. They're just getting their first suburban model. Grand Rapids, where we just completed a study, has no nationals. They have not encouraged them to come here. They can't make it illegal, but they have a wonderful selection of one-of-a-kind specialty stores. It's a great place to go shopping, but it's almost all independent retailers. For example, there's not a Starbucks at all in downtown Grand Rapids except at the hotel and the hospital. They were shocked when we did this market study because we found they could actually support 645,000 square feet. That's half the size of Somerset Mall. And there is a great market potential for the downtown should they choose to do it. This is downtown Charleston, one of the great downtowns. This is King Street. I think it's the most sustainable downtown. It has the best antiques district in the United States, a great restaurant district, French Quarter, has wonderful, one-of-a-kind local and regional stores, historic market, and then all the great leading nationals are here. Now, when we work in downtowns, we have to compete with this. People are now tired, and they're all text messaging, especially when they go outside. And your job as a shopping village is to get people to come here on a regular basis. I shouldn't have waited till I was 40 years old to come here. And I only came here because I got a project to work on. You need to get people here on a regular basis. Once they're here, you need to get them into the store. And then once they're in the store, the merchant has to get them to buy something that they really probably don't need. You have to do all three. One of the challenges is that the average paycheck is spent before they get it. Only 4% of the budget is left over for clothing and only 5% for dining out. 91% of most paychecks are spent before you get them. And when fuel prices go up 25 cents a gallon or you lose your overtime or whatever, people stop shopping. They do not have to shop. It's an elective activity for the most part. I saw a survey recently that this is where my son goes to college. My son went to school in Scotland, and he used to come back very well groomed. And we figured out why when we went over to visit him. This is where he gets his haircut. He got a free shot. You know, it's a brilliant thing that a barber does to get you enticed to get a haircut and your shoes done or whatever. But you have to constantly come up with reasons for people to shop. It's very challenging. I saw this survey recently that said that the average household could go 3 years without buying new clothing. Okay, none of us wear our clothing out. We outgrow it, or we see something new, we buy it. The trick, and we come up with tricks. The fashion industry last year came up with this gimmick called vanity sizing. And I hate to break the news to you, but they took out all the labels in women's clothes and put in new labels that were one size smaller. So if you were a size 6, last year you became a size 4. And so women, they test marketed it and it worked. So women gave away their whole wardrobes and bought new wardrobes to reward themselves for losing weight. It was brilliant. Okay, and we're gonna stop and change the tape. Take a question or two if you want to while we're waiting. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Yes.